So, good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? Sleepy? We are going to cover now the second session for the basic workshop. Before starting, Jose was telling me something maybe interesting for us. Is anyone here who did not start on the CakePHP project yet? Like this star here on CakePHP? If not, it's a good moment for doing it. So just go there and click the little star. Do it now. So, day 2. Well, yesterday we were focusing mainly on setting up a development environment, doing the basic configuration stuff, and making some CRUDs for our schema. You remember this fake application not based at all in my current Alpha Centauri campaign. So, about the model layer, we cover everything from validation to callbacks, and we did a couple of examples, if you remember those. We also finished yesterday creating a new behavior for the model layer to be able to notify the owner when a given answer or question was created on the system. We used the Cake email to send emails to those users. So today we are going to focus on controllers on views and model unit testing. And if we had the time, at the end I have a couple of things we could show. The slides and the code will be available for you today, as promised yesterday. I'm going to send you an email so you have both as a reference if you want to download or do whatever you want. And, well, remember, if somebody here needs a new ticket for the Wi-Fi, just raise your hand. Okay. James, can we provide him a ticket? Okay. Now we have a super Wi-Fi, so I hope we don't have the issues we had yesterday. Did anyone still having issues with development environment setup? I can spare some time at the end of the session today and sit with him to fix it, but I don't think it's okay. Somebody told me yesterday, but I don't remember. You were not because you were fixed. Yeah. Okay. Just let me know. Okay, the first thing here is remember the behavior we created yesterday. This is the notify owner behavior we did. It's a pretty stupid behavior, but for playing with some concepts about the models and behaviors in the framework, you know, we added this after save callback here on the behavior that gets called automatically from the model, well, from the framework when a new model is saved. So we first check any attached callbacks on the behaviors. We run those callbacks, and then we call the after save method in the model itself to do whatever we need there. So one thing we have by default in behaviors is a basic configuration we can use if we need to customize how this behavior works. We're going to learn today how to use this default configuration, so you can very quickly add things and change how the behavior works. This is the example. Let me paste that into the behavior. So if you take a look at this code, if we override the protected default config property, we are going to give this behavior some default keys and values that CakePHP will have available for us in the behavior config. The new way for accessing the configuration in behaviors is using this config method. So you will get all the configuration as an array. And then you can use the configuration any place here on the behavior. Let me do a full example so you can see how it goes. Okay. Well, about that, somebody was asking me yesterday how to run it again. I'm running this time using a screen, so I'm not get bothered with that. Using screen for running the server will run the server in the background and put it inside a screen. So if my connection get broken or anything, I'm not stopping the server for running. So if you are using the Azure option for the workshop, it's good that you run that inside a screen. So if your SSH connection gets broken, your server is still there, so you don't have any other issues with that. Okay. And remember, I'm using Vagrant as my development environment this time, and I just forwarded port 8080 on my Vagrant configuration to use the guest port 8080. So I'm accessing localhost, but really I'm accessing the Vagrant virtual machine port 8080. I know you are already. Is there anyone who is not familiar with Vagrant at all? Okay, Vagrant is very easy to. I would recommend you to test it because it's very easy to set up several different virtual machines and use them like disposable virtual machines. You can do whatever you like there, and you don't get too worried because you just need to destroy an app again. If you are playing with some setup scripts or anything related with the environment, it's very easy to use Vagrant because it's quick to set up and very easy to use. So yes, let me quickly change our behavior. I'm going to add this protected property here. Boom. Right? So we are going to add a new default configuration here with some keys. We are going to set up what's the name of the table we are going to use to refer to the owner. We're going to use what's the name of the field we're going to use to refer as the foreign key in this table. And we are to use a log true or false. This is stupid, but I'm going to add this as an example so we can see something different in the view on the behavior. And I'm going to change this a little bit to use the configuration. Oh, sorry. Okay. So the only thing here is CakePHP will merge. Yeah. Oh yeah. Same as yesterday. Ah, much better. Thank you. So the only thing here is, as I told you, CakePHP will use the default configuration and the past configuration will merge both. It's not like a merge, it's an override. So if you override a configuration from the place where you define the behavior, it will take the new configuration. So you don't need, in 3.0, you don't need to manage it by hand. It's done by the framework for you. So you just need to go here. Well, if we try to, because default is false, if we add a new answer now, we are not getting anything back. Well, I think you believe me, so I'm not doing it. But let me show you how to use the configuration anyway. For example, the answers. Remember, we use the initialize for everything on models right now. Properties are gone. We have all those methods here for setting up the associations, for setting up the primary key, the display field, and the table. This is like the use table property we had before. And we are using now the add behavior here to add this behavior to the table. We are going to override the configuration for this behavior like this way. And pass log true, for example, whatever, okay? So now, if we go here and save an answer, right? We should have this in my log, in our log file. Okay, so here's the email. Remember, we are using the debugger log function to log all the stack trace, so we have everything there on top. Whatever. If you have any questions, this is mostly related with yesterday. So we start today with controllers. Bless you.
One question: is it possible to switch off these traces in the logs?
What?
The code trace.
The stack trace on top?
Stack trace,
yes. We can use log to log whatever you want, just what you want to log. But I was using debugger because I usually have a snippet to like say I am in this file in this line when I do log things, because if I use that for debugging, I have maybe a lot in the code. I don't know. And using that is like you don't need to tweak anything. It's there for you. If you need a stack trace, you can use that. If you don't need a stack trace, don't use debugger. Just use the log for logging. Okay, So, controllers. Well, controllers in CakePHP, controllers in the MVC, you know, are like bosses. They should know the minimum amount of info they need to take a good decision on what they're doing. So on all the logic you are planning to add to your application should not be placed on a controller by default. So if you have one of those, for example, now if we have one of those, because we have now a fluent interface on the model, if you start working on a query and it gets a little bit long there and you find yourself adding a lot of stuff there in the controller, just start thinking about a custom finder, or start thinking about a specific method in the model. So the controller is like, I'm just only going to do a call to the model layer at least, or usually a call, get the result and modify it if I need it a little bit, but send it to the view. And the view will take care of displaying or doing any other thing there. Hopefully nothing. So everything is coming from the model, and we don't need to do any data manipulation, of course, in the view. So there is no, well, all the controllers in 3.0 extend the app controller class that is there ready for you in case, usually in case you need to override the before filter, for example, the before filter callback, and configure application-wide controller settings on your components or anything like that. Then uses is no more. You remember in 2.0 the uses let you define several models you can use. You can have accessible directly in your controller. This is no longer needed. Now you have the load model for doing that. So if any controller method should require more than one or any other model that is not the default model associated with the current controller, you can use load model for that. Okay. The other thing we can do in controllers is affecting the views, and the set and render are already familiar for you, so this is not a big change. Another thing is flow control. Now redirect. Redirect will, of course, send us to a new URL using also the code for permanent or temporary redirects. Note on that, you should use return in redirect, because the third param in 2.0 that was the exit, if I remember correctly, is no more here. So when you return the redirect, even the Vagrant code is using return redirect right now. I don't know if anyone here used before redirect without returning. So you need to ensure that the code is stopped there just when you redirect to another page. And of course, controllers have several callbacks we could use. We have the before filter, accepting now the event as a param. We have the before render and the after filter. In a similar way that with modals, control callback, the before filter control callback will be executed before any action in the controller. So you can use before filter to do setup for all the actions in your controller. Then we have the before render and the after filter. Okay. Before render will be executed after the action, but before the data is sent to the view. So if you have something generic to do with the data, maybe for this specific view, you can put this logic in the before render callback if you need it. Okay. Keep in mind, controller callbacks are also affected by components. Well, not the callbacks itself, but you can define those callbacks in components. And if you set the controller to use the component, this logic will come into effect the same way with the models. When you define a callback in the model and you set the model to the table to use the behavior, those callbacks take place before the model callbacks, the table callbacks in this case. Okay. So the control is where you place and where you use both components and helpers. Also, controllers has access to two important objects in CakePHP. You already know, possibly, the CakePHP request and the CakePHP response. Using the CakePHP request, well, there are some minor changes, like I think the param function is added from 2.0, but we had the query function, the data function, already there, so we can inspect the request params, the request query, or the request data in case we have a post using the key, and we'll return null if the key is not present on there, so you don't need to do additional check-ins like if it's set or whatever using the array. You can use a dot notation there in those three functions to access nested data inside the array, and return null if not found. Then we have the ability to use several detectors provided in the request object, like the post, the get, Ajax, mobile, and SSL. Well, calling one of those detectors. You have even the ability to add new detectors very easily for your project in case you need, or you have specific conditions. You're passing, like, imagine you're using a header, specific headers for passing some bit of configuration to your application. You could create a new detector to inspect the request. If the header is there, return true. If the header is not there, return false. So you don't need to repeat that code every time on the controller layer, but it's there for you. And this is how a request object is content is displayed when you debug it. Just remember, we have a lot of info here. Well, data is empty or will be empty if we are not posting any data to the controller, and also for the query. But for the params, remember we have all that interesting information there in case we need to inspect that and change the logic in the controller based on that, or create a component based on any of those params, switch to any kind of logic or the other. Okay. Okay, about the response, we can modify the response object during the execution of our current logic in CakePHP. And once we are done, we can do it with all those methods here, like the status code, the body, to set a specific body for the current response. This is usually done when you are working or creating an API, so you don't care too much about doing an output of HTML, but you rather prefer to control specifically what you want to be there in the body when you return. Also for the headers. And we have a little control here at the response level about the expiring and disabling the catch. So all those headers are set for you, and the browser is not going to catch, for example, an Ajax request when you need fresh data to come through the browser every time. And then we have the file function in the response object that will take care of triggering a download if you want, and forcing the download to occur on your browser. Okay. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this, not more, and I want you to write a controller action to download the error log file in your CakePHP application. 5 minutes. Let me know when you finish. You're done? You need to create a file or just do a typo and run the, so you get an error log. Well, usually you don't have this kind of code in your application because we don't want to expose all that information to a possible attacker, but just an example to download a file. Okay. Anyone get stuck with that? So let's do it. VI controller answers. Okay, so we're adding a new action there, download error log. We're setting a response file. We are setting download to true here. So the browser will trigger a download when we request this URL. And we are also setting a name because we don't want to override or add those 1, 2, 3, 4 parentheses when we download the same file again. So we just added some data there, so it's generated on download. Where's this? Where should I go to look for this constant? Where do you think is declared? Yeah. Okay, makes sense, right? I mean, yeah. Where should I? Yeah. It's a path. It's a path. So in paths. Okay. So now you don't need to look around. Just go there and change it if there's another place for you. So. If I go there and say. Don't let log. Forget this. Well, so there it is. Okay. Good. So. Let's talk about now about components and some core components we have available and what they do. And then we are going to play a little bit with security. I saw we had a very good amount of people voting for the security in the poll we did in Facebook. Security and unit tests, I think they were the two most interesting topics for this poll. So I'm going to quickly example here how to form tampering or how to tamper one of your forms in your application and how it gets prevented by using the security component. Did you ever tamper anything before? Okay, we are doing it very quickly so you see what's happening there and how to prevent that using the security component. Okay, this is the right place to reuse controller logic like the behavior for the model layer. So if you find yourself writing one and again the same code in your controllers, possibly a good place is app controller for that. But if you plan to reuse that on other projects, then a component is the right place. Components should deal mostly with things like the request, the response, but never with the data, of course. If you're dealing with the data, just think about the model layer. Okay? Remember the fat controllers, fat models, thin controllers mantra. Okay, so keep it on your code. Yeah, we have some changes here, like the session component, for example, in 2.0 is now broken in two different components. We have the session component for accessing the session, the same way we had in 2.0, and we have a new component that is the flash control component. You remember we did flash messages before using the session component. Now this is separated in another class. So if we want to use flash messages, we need to go and use the flash component instead of the session. We have the cookie component, auth component. Also for security was broken into two different components. So if you want to use security, but you are not interested in cross-site request forgery controller, a component, sorry, you can just use one of both. We are going to use today security component only. And we have the request handler component, the paginator component, and ACL component is not there anymore. It was moved to a plugin for himself because he has, well, you know, ACL is packed with a lot of logic and features there. So now there is a specific place for that. If you don't need that in your application, you just ignore this plugin. If you want to incorporate ACL, you can use the plugin as or any other that you're planning to use. So we have a Flash example here. The Flash is like new. We're going to be able to define the Flash component, and we'll have the ability to create specific Flash elements very easily now. By default, the Flash component will detect any method here. This is kind of a magic color, and based on the name of the function, we'll try to find a new element located under the template element Flash folder. Based on this element, we will display one thing or another. Let's test it real quick. So you see a difference here. For example, in index, I'm going to add this component first. Components. Flash. Well, remember. Well, one thing here. The components array in 3.0 will be merged with the components array declared in the app controller. So it's not going to work the same way you expect using object-oriented. I mean, it's not going to be replaced, but it's going to do a little bit of magic there. So you can declare components here, but do not override the components declared in the app controller. So you can have application-wide controllers declared in your app controller, and then add specific controllers there in every controller, component, sorry. So once we get that, I'm going to use the Flash component there. Here. Right? And we are going to create a new template for it. Okay. Remember, in 3.0, some folders changed. We had a slide for checking those. Just remember, now it's called element in singular inside the template, so you don't get any typos here. And we can add something here. Okay, this message will be, of course, the value you pass to the Flash component, right? In this case, to the big method. Okay. And we are setting some HTML markup for displaying this message. So if we go now to the answers index. Okay. Well, you can have, there are a couple of templates there ready for you to use. Okay. Is that too long? We have a default template, we have an error and a success. So if you use the Flash component, you can do something like Flash success, Flash error, or simply Flash, and use different templates to output things. Did you tweak that? Anyone here tweaked that in 2.0 to show green bars or a thumbs up when everything goes okay? And yeah, that was a pretty common use case for fixing the Flash meshes, because it was kind of limited before, and now it's very easy to change, as you can see. So let's go now and have some fun with our forms. We are going to do a very quick tampering example for one of our forms here. Example, not this one. Well, yeah, this one. Okay, what's this about? I'm going to show you the form here. Right? Okay. We're setting a hidden field, or we're not setting anything. CakePHP by default on the edit action, the form will set a default hidden field there, an input field hidden with the value of the current field we are going to edit this time. So we should not be supposed to change that, but nobody stopped us doing it. I mean, if we go here, and we change that and put another one like 3, right? And then we save this. Then it's not saved. Oh yeah, it is. But it is. Did I change the right one? Sorry. Come on. Okay. 2. Okay. What? This is just oh yeah, sorry. So this is not the right one. Where is it? Ah, it's here. Why I don't see it? Yeah, well, of course this is not the right thing to do, because we are also adding we also have a drop down there, and security components not checked. Well, we are not using yet security components, but we have a 1 there, so we have a drop down. So maybe we should use another. Let me quickly fix this and use another example instead of this. We are going to well, no, this is a hidden, so changing this should submit to the third, right?
But you still have one.
Yeah, but this is the question ID, right? So we're changing a hidden value here. Okay. But it's not changing. Okay, let's debug it to see what anyone is seeing here. What's happened?
You use the ID from URL, not from the post.
Well, let's see. So we are expecting to have a different data array. So let's debug it to see what happens. Maybe I'm wrong or doing something weird here. So this was. Let's do a template. Let's do a controller. Answers. Now edit. So die. So if I go here and save this, what's wrong here? Huh? Maybe I'm not using the right folder for this.
What's in the entity class?
In the entity class?
Yeah.
Yeah. Model entity. Answer.
Is the field on that list the field that's not saved?
Is the ID?
You're not allowed to mass assign them.
So we are for the ID it will not work, right? This example. So let me add it here, and this is great because now we can talk about the accessible array. Okay. I forgot about that. This is somehow new for the accessible. Yeah. Okay. Let me try it again. Oh. Oh yeah. Here. Well, we have an accessor there, like this one. Whatever. Okay. So let me tamper first, and so. So now it is. Right. Cool. I didn't know that.
You cannot tamper the form.
You cannot tamper so easily. So yeah, what happened there? This is actually a great example. Yeah? Yeah?
Can you explain why?
Yeah. Okay. So what I did, because the edit, well, when I generate an edit view, okay, I'm generating a hidden field for saving the current ID of the entity I'm changing, right? This is in one in this case. This is a hidden field there as an input. So I would not be supposed to go there and change that, because imagine we have users and all the stuff configured, and I have only permission to edit my own questions. So we have a controller code checking like, hey, you are the user number 5. So I am going to check the owner of this question. If the owner is 5, then I will show you the edit page. If the user is not number 5 or ID 5, I will throw an exception, something like, hey, you're not authorized or whatever, okay? So yeah, we passed that, and now we are authorized because we are the owner of this question, and we reach to this form, right? Imagine you are in that situation. So now you are not a good man, and you want to change a question from another user, or change another question. Imagine you already know that the first question is a question you want to change, but you are not the owner of this question. You could edit one of your questions, go to the ID, and put a 1 there. So when you save, you're sending ID1 in the data array. Right? Imagine I am the owner of the third question, right? But and this is the content and everything, okay? But I am a bad guy, and I want to edit the first question. I don't have permission. If I go there and put edit 1, usually our logic will detect you are not the owner and throw an exception, okay? You follow?
So there is a condition on the update currently?
No, there is no condition at all right now. I'm just tampering a form.
Yeah.
But I'm just putting you in the situation where we already have auth configured. We already passed a login. So we have a user ID. So you can check in this action if you are the owner or not. And imagine that the logic you have in the controller on the other side is every time you save, you should check you are the owner of the question you're saving. But imagine you are not doing that. So in this case, I could go here and do something the system is not ready for. That is, well, the system is super ready now in 3.0, but was not ready in 2.0. So I can go here. I am supposed to save the third question, but I'm going to save the first question instead. So I'm going here, change that. Instead of saving to the third question, I'm saving to the first one. Okay? So let me remove my debug code here. If I save this, it gets saved, but I'm saving the first question, not the third one.
Yeah, I get that. I just don't understand how Cake managed initially to block it without adding a security component.
Let's talk about that. I didn't understand it well, too. So, yeah, let me show you again the entity. Okay, so this is like the default baked code for this entity. This is not there yet. So now we have a protected, accessible property in the entity that has all the field names that we can actually import or patch from the request when we use the marshaller to build the entity through the new entity or patch entity methods, right? So if we don't have a field here, when we use the new entity method in the controller, let's take a look at the controller. Look at the edit code here. The first thing we're doing is getting the answers ID. Getting the answer entity with this ID, okay? Then we are using patch entity to merge the data we are getting from the request into this entity, okay? So the patch entity will use the marshaller object to detect which of those fields are okay to be merged or not. And we can configure that in the underscore accessible property in the entity for now. So if we don't want a field because it's a sensitive field like the ID or things like that, if we don't want that kind of field to be merged from the request data, we just not add this field to the accessible property array.
So do you need the security anymore?
Yeah, we need it. But because we don't need, for example, if we imagine that, well, let's modify a little bit so we can tamper and get an error later. So what fields do we have here? Okay, imagine that user is good. User ID, okay. Imagine that instead of tampering the ID, we are going to tamper the user ID. It's already done. But instead of having that, I'm going to change this. Where's the user ID? No, this is not the right place. Okay, here, instead of having an input with options, I'm having a hidden, the user ID, and we are setting the value from the controller. Right? And then we go to the controller, this one, right? And we have some kind of before filter. And we add this set. Okay, imagine that we did our alt stuff, login or whatever. We have a user ID in the session. We pass the user ID to the view. We get there, and now if we edit this like that, Oh. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Burn types. Yeah. Okay. So now we have a hidden field for that. That is around here. Okay. We're going to change that. And here it is. Okay? We've changed that, right? We are not supposed to change the user owner of this current answer we are editing here, but we did. So this is where the security component comes. So we could go here. Okay. We go back to our form. Let me save this on. We edit again. And now, well, anybody here never used the security component? Everybody? Right. So, well, you know how it works. It will talk with the form helper and add this hidden input there with the hash of the fields and the values you have in the form. And, well, it's a token. And if we try now to change that, like this, no, like this, to then we get a black hole. Our well, you cannot. You possibly will need to unlock that field you're changing with Ajax. If you have some some logic in the view that will inject or change the values there in a hidden input, you could use unlocked fields. Let's do it as an example. If we add it to the unlock fields array, a security component will ignore this specific field, and you will need to provide some kind of validation your side. This is useful when you create forms using the form helper, and you submit standard forms. If you have crazy, complex Ajax logic there, and you override inputs, hidden inputs, for example, then you need to provide your own.
Which field you change actually?
Which one?
Which field
The user ID field.
User ID you change.
Yeah.
But it works on all fields, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, not just user.
So what does it actually check when you do the security? How does it know? Because you know some of the fields you want to check. So it's only check the hidden one.
It will check. Well, if you go down on debug this, in the form helper, something that you possibly will be doing somehow in the future, if you use security component, you'll see here, you have those two values there. One is for having all the field names and the values for the hiddens. Okay?
Only for the hidden.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because that's only one.
Yeah, because it's a form, so it's not hidden. You are supposed to change that. Yeah. And the other one is the list of unlocked fields you have in that form, if you have anything.
Does it work with disabled fields as well?
With which ones?
If you have a field and you mark it as disabled, will it have the same effect as a hidden field?
Yeah, yeah. You actually can also use the form helper and unlock the field from the form helper or from the component if you want.
Is he asking if the security component is only for hidden fields in the form or all the fields in the form? That hash should include all the fields that are in the form.
Oh,
You can't add or remove fields, but you can change the contents of them. So it doesn't check like if you have radio buttons or select drop-downs. It can't check that the value that was posted is in the set of the value that was supposed to be in the set. But it will make sure that like extra fields weren't added and fields were removed.
You can't remove any hidden fields. You can't alter the value of hidden fields. And you can't remove hidden fields or add fields on any of the visible form.
yeah. That's it. You cannot inject new fields in the form. You cannot remove those who are there in the form. And the values in the hidden inputs cannot be modified. And, well, select and radio options are not prevented. So you need to take care of that if you have to. Okay? But yes, if you remove a field actually, or you add a new field, that is is going to blow the, or is going to be detected and black holed. Okay.
The select on the radio, you mean you don't check the value of the select on the radio, or you don't check the equal out?
The value, because yeah, it's not checked the exact values you have in a select, so you could possibly inject a new value when you submit this form. Okay, so you need to take care of that.
Yeah, the security component is in no way a replacement for validation. You should still do all your validation in the system so that you know that people aren't adding or removing fields in the form. You should still always do validation.
Yeah, that's a good hint. So, well, we can also configure the callback we want to run when we are in this situation, because maybe throwing a black hole exception to the end user is not the best approach here. So instead of using the defaults, we have debug enabled now, so we are seeing all the stack trace. If we have debug false, we will get an internal server exception, those 500. So this is not, is 500 what's returned, or 404 in a black hole? We can test it. Well, it doesn't matter. In any of those cases, maybe we need to, or we prefer to treat those errors, log them, or inform the user about, hey, you are doing weird things on the form, or please resubmit the data, or whatever. Okay.
400 bad requests.
Bad request. Okay, it's a 400, right? So yes, we could add a configuration for our security component. So we could define here any callable, for example, a method in the same class, and here, and define a new method, do whatever we need, and then throw the right kind of exception or redirect to a nicer page or anything we want. Okay. Any other questions about security component? Well, in my experience, is a bit. This is some kind of standard. I mean, you should. Well, I always try to start always with security component and configure unlock fields or unlock actions if I need to get something out of it. But just start with it. I mean, don't wait to the last minute and say, hey, yeah, we're going to add security component in this project. We develop everything, and then the last day you add the component there, because something could break very easily in the middle. So it's much better if you start from the beginning using security component. You will see all those errors, and then you can provide solutions.
I noticed that require post and require get and require put are all gone from security component. How would you implement that functionality in version 3?
To get what?
To force a certain method on a form.
Yeah.
In the component in version 2, you can say require post and require get.
Mm-hmm.
But those methods aren't in the component in 3.
Okay.
How would you implement something similar?
Yeah, I think this is maybe in request should be there. No, let me check that. So, is in the request?
Yeah, in request is allow method.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it was moved to the request. Makes sense to have that there, because you're checking if a condition on the request actually.
Not
so,
necessarily be security.
yeah. So, great. Well, let's start talking about views a little bit. This is a very basic diagram on how CakePHP renders finally your content in the view layer. We have one layout with several elements or blocks defined at the layout level. And then we have a special block in the layout. This is called content. We have another special called title there. And inside the content block, we render our view file. This is exactly the same in as 2.0. And we have also in our view files the ability to add several elements and several blocks there. Okay. Are you familiar with blocks and using blocks? Anyone's not familiar with that? Okay. When I think about elements and blocks, I like to think about top down and bottom up. I mean, element is like if you design something from top down. You know what is going to be placed in every single place in your view. So you start with the layout, then you define the holes, but you know what is going on there in those holes. And when I think about blocks, I think bottom up. I know there's a chunk there, but I don't know what is there inside. I'm just defining a layout or a template, and I say, hey, here's the menu, but somebody sometime in the future will fill the content. So I just define the structure, and somebody in the future will fill it. Okay? The blocks have also the ability to let your views extend one to the other. We're going to get some view extension at the end today. We have that in the extra ball for today. If we had the time, we are going to view some extensions, so you can have like mini layouts in your application. You have a big layout, a mini layout, and your view. Okay. So well, this is the default layout. Layouts are still here in template, layout, and we have, we don't have it. Because no helpers too. Well, we don't have a. We are using the default layout. Okay. Yep. Yeah, it's there. So yeah, this is the default layout. You'll see no real changes here. We are using HTML helper for bringing back some well-formatted HTML tags and markup. And this is one of the changes because we don't have to use the session anymore to output the Flash messages because we have a specific Flash helper for that. And this is how we create a block with using this fetch. The name content is like reserved. We should not create new blocks that are called content because it won't work. So just you have the ability to create any kind of block you want, but don't name it content. Right. So playing a little bit with blocks. When using blocks, I should first declare where the block is using fetch and the block of and the name of the block, and then I can use start with the name of the block to feed content inside that block. Okay? So what should be feeded using this code? What do you think that should go in the block output? Compile it in your heads. That's it? Anyone? Well, we're starting a block called block. We're feeding contents to a block called block. But then here, we're starting again the same, so contents will be overridden. So all the previous content we have here will be ignored. And the output we are going to have in this block is start a new block, and we are going to prepending. So the final output should be prepending ... started a new one. Okay, this is just a warning for you to remember to use prepend or append, whatever, in case you need to compose a block in different places. So remember, if you call start again, the contents will be gone, and possibly this could go unnoticed or something. So take care of that. Okay.
Can you start multiple blocks at once and then you have the same content basically?
Deeper blocks.
No, can you start many blocks with different names and they will have the same content basically?
No, the start will append all the output to this block, and you cannot start twice.
Start block 1, start block 2.
No, you can start block 1, feed the content, then start block 2, feed the content. do whatever.
Password?
I don't think so. And could be misleading as well, right? Because you're why don't you generate a variable with the content you want to feed in, and then you assign the variable to the several blocks, like assign block 1 content, assign block 2 content, assign block 3 content. Or better, if this content is very is hard to generate, maybe using an element and doing some, I don't know. Well, so we're going to build a homepage. This is something you're going to do. I'm going to be here for you, and we are going to do it as an exercise, okay? Because we are going to play with a finder. You can create a custom finder if you want with the knowledge we have from custom finders from Jose yesterday. We're going to display the 5 latest answers in our homepage. We're going to show the user's organization name. We are going to use a footer block. We are going to use a top menu element, and we are going to fill the footer block from the view. Okay? If you want, and we want to use some kind of template at this level. Keep in mind we are not cover HTML helper yet, so if you want to use HTML helper is okay. If you don't want to use it, it's okay for me too. This is like composing a view from the start. I imagine you didn't have previous knowledge about the HTML helper, so we can start with plain HTML code. Get the template from there, create a layout, and inject the view. And the final result should be something like this. I don't know if this is, well, the column, the user, the question, and the answer. And this should be answers home action in your answers controller. Go ahead and do it. Raise your hand if you get stuck. Let's give it 10 or 20 minutes. Sorry? Yeah.